Commander Jax Reeves had spent 30 years reading the stars, but he had never seen anything like Ember space. The region burned with the dying light of 1,000 failed suns, their cores scattered across the void like the ashes of a cosmic fire. No species in the Galactic Union dared to enter this place. The radiation alone could cook a ship's sensors in minutes. The gravitational anomalies could tear apart even the strongest hulls. But humanity had never been good at listening to warnings. "We have confirmed visual contact," said Lieutenant Torres from her station aboard the tracking vessel Pathfinder. "The Kresh fleet is moving through Sector 7 Alpha. 17 vessels. They think they're invisible." Jax allowed himself a small smile. The Kresh had been a problem for the Galactic Union for centuries. These insectoid raiders would strike colony worlds, steal resources, and vanish into the darkness of space. No one had ever caught them. No one had ever followed them home. The other species had simply accepted this as the way things were. Humans had arrived on the galactic stage only 50 years ago, and they had a very different attitude toward problems. "Maintain distance," Jax ordered. "Keep all active sensors offline." We tracked them the old way. The old way was something the other species had forgotten. Before faster-than-light travel, before advanced scanning technology, humans had learned to navigate by watching. They had sailed wooden ships across oceans by reading the movement of birds and the color of clouds. They had found their way through deserts by studying the patterns of animal tracks. They had hunted prey across endless grasslands by following signs that were invisible to casual observers. This ancient knowledge had not disappeared. It had evolved. The Kresh ships were using stealth technology that made them invisible to standard sensors. But nothing was truly invisible. Every ship displaced particles. Every engine left behind trace elements. Every vessel created tiny ripples in the fabric of space itself. The other species had grown so dependent on their technology that they had forgotten how to look with their own eyes and minds. Humans had never stopped looking. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was the best tracker in the human fleet. She had spent her youth hunting deer in the mountains of Japan with her grandfather, learning to read the forest like a book. Now she applied those same skills to the void between stars. She sat at her station with her eyes closed, not watching the screens, but feeling the ship's movement through subtle vibrations in the deck. "They're slowing down," she said softly. "The lead ship just changed course by 0.3 degrees. They're being careful. They know this space is dangerous. Can you predict their path?" Jax asked. Yuki opened her eyes and studied the holographic map of Ember space. The Kresh fleet was shown as faint ghosts, barely visible even to the Pathfinder's modified sensors. Around them swirled the chaos of the region, clouds of radioactive dust, gravity wells that shifted without warning, and fields of debris from ships that had tried to cross this space and failed. "They're following a pattern," Yuki said. "Every time they approach a gravity well, they curve left. Every time they pass a radiation cloud, they increase speed. They know this space. They have been here many times before." This was the key insight that had made the tracking mission possible. The Kresh were not wandering randomly through Ember space. They were following a route, a path that had been used for generations, and paths could be learned. Admiral Chun had proposed the mission 3 months ago, when the Kresh had attacked the human colony on New Taipei. They had killed 4,000 people and stolen the colony's entire supply of rare earth minerals. The Galactic Union had offered condolences. They had promised to increase patrols. They had done nothing useful. Chun had gone to the Union Council with a different proposal. Give humanity permission to track the Kresh. Let humans do what humans did best. The alien representatives had laughed. They had explained with great patience that tracking the Kresh was impossible. Many species had tried over the centuries. All had failed. Chun had smiled and said 5 words that would change galactic history. "You have never tried humans." The Pathfinder had been designed specifically for this mission. Its hull was coated with materials that absorbed radiation rather than reflecting it. Its engines were modified to produce almost no heat signature. Its crew had been selected from the best trackers, hunters, and scouts that humanity could offer. They were people who had grown up reading signs in nature, who understood that the universe always left clues for those patient enough to find them. The first month had been the hardest. The Pathfinder had searched the edges of Kresh raiding territory, looking for the faint traces that marked their retreat routes. They had found nothing for weeks. The alien advisors aboard the ship had grown restless. They had suggested giving up. They had explained again that this mission was impossible. But Jax had noticed something interesting. The alien advisors kept looking at their screens. They kept checking their sensors. They never looked out the windows. They never simply watched the space around them. "Turn off the main screens," Jax had ordered. The bridge crew had been confused, but they obeyed. In the sudden darkness, with only the glow of emergency lighting, something changed. The crew stopped relying on their technology. They started relying on themselves. Lieutenant Kim was the first to spot it. A pattern in the dust clouds that seemed slightly different from the surrounding chaos. A trail of disturbed particles that curved through the void like a river through sand. It was so faint that no sensor could have detected it. But human eyes, trained to notice what did not belong, could see it clearly. They had followed that trail for 2 weeks. It had led them to another trail, and then another. Slowly, carefully, they had mapped the Kresh escape routes through the outer regions of space. And then they had found the entrance to Ember space. No ship had ever entered Ember space and returned to tell about it. The radiation was too intense. The gravitational anomalies were too unpredictable. The debris fields were too dense. Every sensor, every computer, every navigation system would fail within minutes of entering the region. But humans had sailed through storms with nothing but wooden ships and their own courage. They had crossed deserts with nothing but their knowledge of the land. They had explored the deepest caves with nothing but torches and determination. Ember space was just another challenge to overcome. The Pathfinder's crew had prepared for weeks before making the crossing. They had trained to navigate without sensors. They had learned to read the movements of dust and debris by eye. They had practiced making decisions based on instinct rather than data. And when they finally entered Ember space, they discovered something remarkable. The radiation did not cook their sensors immediately. The gravitational anomalies did not tear them apart. The debris fields were navigable for those who knew how to look. The danger of Ember space had been exaggerated for centuries, probably by the Kresh themselves to discourage anyone from following them. Now, 3 weeks into Ember space, the Pathfinder was closing in on its prey. "The fleet is entering a cluster of dead stars," Yuki reported. "I count 7 stellar remnants in close proximity. The gravity in there must be extremely complex." "Too complex for us to follow?" Jax asked. Yuki shook her head. "No, I can see the path they're taking. It twists through the gravity wells like a snake through rocks. But I can follow it. We can follow it." The alien advisors exchanged nervous glances. Ambassador Krill, a tall insectoid from a species called the Ven, stepped forward. His antennae twitched with anxiety. "Commander, this is madness. No ship can navigate such a region safely. The Kresh have been doing this for generations. They know every rock, every current, every danger. We are flying blind." Jax turned to face the ambassador. "We are not flying blind, Ambassador. We are tracking. There is a difference." "What difference?" Krill demanded. "We have no data. We have no maps. We have nothing but your human eyes and instincts. That is everything," Jax said quietly. "That is all we have ever needed." He turned back to the view screen, where the cluster of dead stars glowed with an eerie light. Somewhere in that maze of gravity and radiation was the Kresh homeworld. Somewhere in there was the answer to a mystery that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. And humanity was about to find it. The Pathfinder moved forward, following the trail that no sensor could detect but human eyes could see. Behind them, the vast darkness of Ember space swallowed their wake. Ahead, the cluster of dead stars waited like a fortress of light. The hunt continued. The cluster of dead stars was even more beautiful up close than it had appeared from a distance. The stellar remnants glowed with colors that had no names in any language, shifting between blues and purples and golds as the light bent through the complex gravity fields. Streams of plasma connected the stars like bridges, and clouds of exotic matter swirled between them like mist in a mountain valley. Commander Jax Reeves watched through the viewport with something approaching awe. In all his years of space travel, he had never seen anything like this. The other species had been right about one thing. Ember space was dangerous. But danger and beauty often walked together, and humanity had learned long ago not to fear either one. "The Kresh fleet has entered the central region," Lieutenant Torres reported. "They're heading for the largest stellar remnant. There's something there." Dr. Yuki Tanaka leaned forward in her seat, her eyes narrowed with concentration. "A station," she said softly. "I can see it now. They've built something in the shadow of that dead star. It's huge." Jax moved to stand beside her, following her gaze through the viewport. At first he saw nothing but the glow of the stellar remnant and the swirling clouds of matter around it. Then, slowly, his eyes adjusted. A shape began to emerge from the chaos, a vast structure that seemed to grow out of the dead star itself. "The Kresh homeworld?" Jax breathed. "They built it here, in the heart of Ember space. No wonder no one ever found them." The station was enormous, easily 10 times the size of any human construction. Its surface was covered with docking ports and defensive towers, and what appeared to be massive cargo holds. This was not just a hiding place. This was the center of an empire, a base from which the Kresh had launched their raids for centuries. "I'm detecting power signatures," Torres said. "They're warming up weapons. They know we're here." Jax had expected this. The Kresh were raiders, not fools. They would have spotted the Pathfinder eventually. The only question was whether humanity had learned enough to make the discovery worthwhile. "Send the data burst," Jax ordered. "Everything we've collected, every scan, every observation, every measurement. Send it all back to Fleet Command." The Pathfinder's communications officer worked quickly, compressing weeks of intelligence into a single transmission. The burst would travel through a series of relay beacons that the crew had dropped along their trail, bouncing the signal out of Ember space and into the wider galaxy. Within hours, the Galactic Union would know exactly where the Kresh had been hiding. The secret that had protected the raiders for centuries was about to be exposed. But first, the Pathfinder had to survive. "Kresh fighters launching," Torres reported, her voice tight with tension. 24, no, 36 contacts. "They're coming fast. Get us into the debris field," Jax ordered. "Find us some cover." The Pathfinder dove toward a cloud of asteroids and ship fragments that orbited one of the smaller stellar remnants. The debris was thick enough to hide in, but thin enough to navigate, perfect for a ship crewed by humans who knew how to read their environment. The Kresh fighters followed, their engines blazing with angry light. They were faster than the Pathfinder, better armed, more maneuverable. In a straight fight, they would tear the human ship apart in minutes. But humans had never believed in fair fights. "Lieutenant Kim, take manual control of navigation," Jax ordered. "Yuki, guide her through. Everyone else, strap in. This is going to get rough." Lieutenant Kim was the ship's best pilot, a woman who had grown up racing speedboats through the rocky channels of the Pacific Northwest. She knew how to thread a needle at high speed, how to read the movement of obstacles and slip between them with centimeters to spare. Her hands settled on the manual controls with calm confidence. "Ready," she said. Yuki closed her eyes, letting her instincts take over. Left 10 degrees. Up 5. Now hard, right? There's a gap in 3 seconds. Take it. Kim followed the instructions without hesitation, throwing the Pathfinder through a gap in the debris field that seemed impossibly small. Behind them, 2 Crush fighters tried to follow. One made it through. The other clipped an asteroid and exploded in a ball of fire. They're not as good at this as we are, Torres observed with grim satisfaction. They've never had to be, Jocks replied. No one has ever chased them before. They don't know how to be prey. The chase continued through the debris field, the Pathfinder weaving and spinning through obstacles that the Crush fighters struggled to navigate. 3 more fighters fell to collisions. 2 more broke off, unwilling to risk the twisting path the humans were taking. But there were still too many. The debris field was not infinite, and eventually the Pathfinder would have to emerge into open space. When that happened, the remaining Crush fighters would have a clear shot. Jocks studied the holographic display, looking for options. The map showed the dead stars, the debris fields, the plasma streams, and the massive Crush station at the center of it all. There had to be something they could use, some trick of the environment that would give them an advantage. Then he saw it. Yuki, he said slowly, that plasma stream connecting the 2 smallest stars. How stable is it? Yuki opened her eyes and studied the display. Not very. The gravitational interactions are constantly shifting. The stream fluctuates every few minutes. Can you predict when it will fluctuate next? Yuki was silent for a long moment, her mind working through calculations that no computer could perform. Then she smiled. Yes, it will surge in approximately 4 minutes. The plasma will expand outward in all directions before contracting again. Can we fly through it through the stream? The bridge went silent. Even the alien advisors stopped breathing for a moment. Flying through a plasma stream was insane. The temperatures would be extreme. The radiation would be lethal, and the electromagnetic interference would blind every sensor on the ship. But the Pathfinder's crew had spent weeks learning to navigate without sensors, and the ship's hull had been designed to handle extreme radiation. Yes, Yuki said finally. If we time it right, we can ride the surge. The plasma will carry us through before the temperatures become lethal. The Crush won't follow. They can't follow. Their ships aren't built for this. Jocks nodded slowly. Do it. The next 4 minutes were the longest of his life. The Pathfinder burst from the debris field and raced toward the plasma stream, the remaining Crush fighters hot on their tail. Weapons fire splashed against the ship's shields, draining power with every hit. Alarms wailed throughout the vessel as systems began to fail under the assault. But Kim kept flying, and Yuki kept guiding, and slowly the plasma stream grew larger in the view screen. 30 seconds, Yuki announced. 20, 10, now. Kim threw the Pathfinder into the plasma stream just as it surged outward. The ship was immediately engulfed in fire, surrounded by temperatures that would have vaporized any normal vessel. But the Pathfinder was not a normal vessel. Its radiation-absorbing hull drank in the heat, converting it to power that fed back into the failing shields. Its crew, trained to fly blind, kept the ship steady through the chaos. Behind them, the Crush fighters pulled up hard, unwilling to follow into the inferno. They circled the edge of the plasma stream, waiting for the Pathfinder to emerge on the other side. They waited a long time. When the surge finally subsided, the Pathfinder was gone. The plasma stream had carried it far beyond the Crush fighters, depositing it in a region of space that the raiders had never thought to guard. From there, it was a straight run to the edge of Ember space and the relay beacons waiting beyond. Data burst received by Fleet Command, the communications officer reported. They have everything. The location of the Crush homeworld, the path through Ember space, all of it. Jocks allowed himself to breathe again. The mission was a success. Humanity had done what no other species had accomplished in centuries of trying. They had tracked the Crush through the most dangerous region of space in the galaxy and found their hidden fortress. 3 months later, a combined fleet from the Galactic Union arrived at the edge of Ember space. Human navigators led them through the maze of radiation and gravity, following the path that the Pathfinder had mapped. The crash station fell after a battle that lasted 3 days. The raiders who had terrorized the galaxy for generations were finally brought to justice. But that was not the most important result of the mission.